Hi, everyone. Thank you for participating in our virtual format tonight for the Glen Ridge Civic Conference Committee's annual Meet the Candidates Night. I'm Brian McCabe, the chair of the CCC this year. And before we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that this event is being recorded. The Civic Conference Committee was founded in Glen Ridge in 1913. The primary purpose of the group is to identify and assist Glen Ridge residents that want to run for public office. We are an all-volunteer, nonpartisan organization. Every spring, we conduct multiple interviews for any candidates interested in running for the Board of Education, the Town Council, and Mayor. Based on our conversations with those individuals, we make recommendations to the community about who we think would best serve the town. We then assist those candidates with getting together the petitions and paperwork needed. We hold public forums like this one so that they have a chance to engage with the community and for community members to ask them questions as well. The CCC is always looking for new members. Anyone who lives in Glen Ridge and can vote is welcome to join. If you think you might be interested, please reach out via email to glenridgecc.mail@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook or at our website, glenridgecc.wordpress.com. We meet the third Tuesday of every month, and our next meeting is November 16th. Tonight, we are joined by the candidates for the Board of Education and the Town Council. This year, as is the case every year, we have 3 seats open for the Board of Education, and we have endorsed 3 candidates: Kristen O'Neill, Anthony Bonnet, and David Campbell. For Town Council, as is the case every year, we have 2 seats up for election, and the CCC has endorsed 2 candidates, Anne Marie Morrow and Rebecca Meyer. Each candidate will be allotted 3 minutes to introduce themselves, after which we will move on to the moderated question and answer session, including some questions that were submitted in advance by members of the community. If you have additional questions for any of the candidates, I encourage you to attend our Coffee with the Candidates event this Saturday, October 23rd, from 9 to 10 a.m. at the Glen Ridge train station. We'll start with the Board of Education candidates, and first up is Kristen O'Neill. Please introduce yourself, Kristen.
Hi, everyone. I want to start off by saying thank you to the CCC for coordinating this event tonight. While I wish we could be together in person, I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet with my fellow candidates for the Town Council and the Board of Ed. And I'm happy to introduce myself to you all. My name is Kristen O'Neill, and as you know, I'm here tonight as a candidate for the Glen Ridge Board of Education. I'm originally from Virginia, but moved to New Jersey after college. With the exception of a few years in Montclair Apartments, I've considered Glen Ridge my home since 2001. I currently have 2 children in the school system, a sophomore and a senior, both of whom have been enrolled in the district since pre-K. I work as a national account manager with a New York-based publishing company, and while I have only been with them for the past 12 years, I've worked within the book industry my entire career. Once my oldest started at Linden Avenue, I was lucky in that my personal and professional duties allowed me the flexibility to volunteer at school. I loved having the chance to serve as class parent, as a co-chair on the Mum and Crumb, Discovery, and second grade promotion committees at Linden. At Ridgewood, I served on several committees there as well, and finally, I served as president of the Home and School Association at both Ridgewood Avenue and the high school, middle school. I've loved every opportunity I've had to work alongside our district, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to continue this path with the Board of Ed.
Thank you. Next up, well, we're waiting on Anthony to connect, so we'll go over to David Campbell.
Thanks. And Brian, thank you and thank the CCC for putting this together. You guys have been really great this election season. You've done a lot more than prior groups at the CCC have. I appreciate that you've expanded your efforts. For anyone who hasn't had the experience of being on the CCC, I'd recommend it. Not a ton of time suck, but really well worth it and a great way to get to know the organizations around town. I'm David Campbell, and I'm an attorney. I work at a registered investment advisor as the general counsel and chief compliance officer in New York. I've been on the Board of Education for a while, I think 10 years, maybe more. I have 3 children, 1 a graduate of the high school and 2 in the high school, a junior and a freshman. On the Board of Ed, I'm the chairman of the Finance and Facilities Committee and the Communications Committee. I look forward to continuing my time on the board starting in January after the November election.
Great, thank you. Still waiting on Anthony Botta, but we'll move on to the town council candidates. Rebecca, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Again, I echo David and Kristen. Thanks again to the CCC for all the work you do. As a past member, I know coordinating and pulling off events like this is certainly not easy, but I think it's an important forum and an opportunity for our town members to get to know the candidates that are on the ballot. So again, my name is Rebecca Meyer. I've lived in town for the last 8 years with my husband, Edward, and my 2 kids. I've got a daughter in 5th grade and a son in 1st grade. I currently work at Prudential, which kind of motivated us to move to this great small town. As many people who live here today, we left New York City looking for a place where we could raise our kids and settle into a great community and education system. And so we're really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to share some more about myself in the next few minutes and why I'm running for town council.
Great, thank you. And then our final candidate here for town council, I'm looking through my notes here, Anne Marie Morrow. Anne Marie?
Yep, thanks. I'm Anne Marie Morrow. I'm honored to be a candidate for Borough Council. I'm going to echo again, thanks to Brian and members of the CCC for remote hosting us tonight and for helping with our candidacy and filings. You really make it painless, making sure we do everything correctly. And again, I guess I'd like to echo David's comments to encourage any new residents who are listening, who are not familiar with the CCC, to take the time to learn about this organization and join if they can. As David mentioned, it's a great way to learn about our town and the many volunteer groups and the individuals that are represented in the CCC. And you will be engaging in an important community service, which is finding candidates for office in a nonpartisan forum. My husband, Bob, and I moved to Glen Ridge 25 years ago. With our family, we had 4-year-old twins and a 1-year-old. We had no connection to New Jersey or this town. Our kids have grown and moved on, more or less. But the friends we've made here, the beauty of this town, the volunteerism of so many in this community are the reasons that we have happily chosen to stay here. I've lived here a long time, and with that have been involved with many organizations. I did serve as an officer in each home and school association that our children attended. I served as co-president of the Glen Ridge Community Fund for many years, and I'm still a trustee of that organization. I'm a lawyer by education. I've had a career working in-house for major financial institutions, most recently for a securities broker and investment bank in New York. I did retire from active practice in April of 2020. In terms of my borough government experience, I was first elected in 2014 to serve an unexpired 1-year term. Thereafter, I was elected to a 3-year term in 2015 and 2018. During this time, I've served as the council rep on the planning board, participating in the process to oversee 2 major construction projects, the Mountainside Hospital Medical Office Building on Bay Avenue. That project we worked on jointly with the Montclair Planning Board. And then more recently, the completed Claris Glen Ridge on Baldwin Street. And that included a set aside for affordable housing units. Serving on the council and on the planning board has really been a privilege for me. It's kept me informed of concerns and issues important to residents and given me the opportunity to work with our administrator and the entire borough team to help find solutions and work to provide a level of service to all the residents.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll now move on to the questions. The first question will go to Kristen O'Neill. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education, and why do you want to serve?
That's a great question. I mean, all of these were great questions. I understand that the overall goal of the Board of Ed is to ensure that a district schools are operating to their greatest potential while working in tandem with the superintendent and the administrative teams. But I also understand that the board is a conduit for decisions made at the state level, and that our role is to make the best local decision possible given those parameters and the parameters set by the New Jersey State Department of Education. In a town like Glen Ridge, though, I really feel that the community is defined by the schools, and I think a lot of people would agree with me there. And to that end, I feel that the board has an added role of community partner because the two are so intertwined, whether it's because of our property taxes, which we all love to talk about, local and school events, sports, there's so many different ways that the two go hand in hand. Why do I want to serve? I mean, honestly, I just feel like it's the right next step for me. And I feel it's important to be a part of the community that I live in. In a way, I feel that the connections I've made through the community and in the schools have been steps on a path bringing me here. My kids have had a really wonderful experience with the Glen Ridge school system, and I feel it's my turn to give back and help others experience the same.
Great, thank you. David, same question to you. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education, and why do you want to serve?
The role of the Board of Education is not to manage the schools, but to ensure that the schools are being managed. Kristen hit it right on the head. We work hand in hand. Well, we get reports from the superintendent, and he is our view, in addition to being parents, into the administration from our sort of seat at the top of it. And then, as Kristen said, we, as parents in town and volunteers, are able to get feedback and input from our constituents, other people like us. I've been on the board for 10 years, and I think that I still have a lot to offer to the students. Every decision that we make has to be in the best interest of the students. Really, there's no second to that primary singular priority. And we will have, with Kristen, 3 new members of the board, which doesn't sound like a lot, but of only 9 people, it's a lot. With Tracy St. Aubern and Michael DeLue, I'll be one of the longer standing members on the board. And I think my role in bringing those 3 up to speed and into the mix is going to be more important than ever. So I still feel like I have to offer what I've been offering throughout, and now maybe more than ever, I can transition to the next iteration of this great board of volunteers that we have.
Great, thank you. Now we'll move on to our town council candidates. Rebecca, what do you see as the role of the town council, and why do you want to serve?
Oh, thanks, Brian. For me, the way I see the town council kind of functioning in Glen Ridge is that we are there to address the needs and the concerns of the residents of the town, whether it be infrastructure, public works, recreation, any sort of states of emergency, really to kind of be there to serve the citizenry. I think it's also our responsibility to represent the town at the county and the state level. really to ensure right compliance with local regulations and state regs, as well as receiving the funding and the support that we need at the town to continue operating at the level that we're currently operating at. I really want to serve for a lot of reasons. I've been really impressed with the volunteerism and engagement in the community, and and seeing what the council can do on such a limited budget. I think of some of the energy aggregation programs, how they respond to the power outages, and really kind of keeping on top of our infrastructure needs. And I'd also like to see people like myself, I would say, represented on the town council. I'm the mom of 2 younger kids, and sort of representing that constituency, I think it's kind of important to have. I also believe, that the best run organizations really do have a diverse set of opinions, experiences, and skills. And I think I bring a lot of skills to the table in not only my professional, my personal experience. I've also had an opportunity to volunteer in numerous capacities across the town, and volunteered in the schools as a class parent and serving in various functions on the home and school. And I've had the pleasure of serving with Anne Marie on the planning board, and had the opportunity to review the master plan and kind of understand what people are thinking and feeling about how the town is evolving. So for me, I've always volunteered. My mom was a great role model for me growing up, and I truly believe that local politics do matter, and that you should be a part of the change that you want.
Great, thank you. Anne Marie, what do you see as the role of the town council, and why do you want to serve?
Thanks, Brian. For me, I see the role of the town council is really to serve as a board of trustees, if you will, on behalf of the residents of the borough. Our role is to set policy, to work collaboratively with our borough administrator, to guide decisions on matters that are of most concern to the residents. Individually, I'd say we are there to ask the questions, discuss any concerns, plans of actions with our colleagues on the council and our borough administrator, always with a view to reach a sound and thoughtful decision on matters that require action. We have committees of the council set up so that we can work in smaller groups with the borough administrator and department heads on matters relating to finance, parks and rec, public safety, communications and community affairs, and planning and development. We should always be guided by what's in the best interest of the town and our residents, to work together as a council to produce results on matters that residents value. If that's safe streets for pedestrians, nice roads, prompt snow removal, parks we can enjoy. I like to think we are open and welcoming. We've all taken calls or emails from residents on issues. We try to help them with questions about services. I'd say another important role is to get information out to residents regarding services that are provided by the borough or a disruption to those services. During the early months of COVID, and I know it's not quite over yet, we did work closely with the county health officer, our county executive, and other county reps in weekly calls together with other towns to review the latest in information on services available. So we really do recognize the value of those connections and resources. Why do I want to serve? Honestly, I do enjoy it. Since moving here, I've always volunteered or been involved with one group or another, typically one with a service component or involving a larger community purpose. I think it's part of, we've all commented, it's really part of what makes this town so special. And I know when I look around at all the organizations full of really talented people in town of all ages and backgrounds, they really work to make this town what it is. You know, we've got the ambulance squad. They provide services not only to our residents, but mutual aid to Bloomfield and Montclair every day. We have the HPC working to preserve the history, beauty of our streetscapes, the Environmental Advisory Committee working on sustainability initiatives, the Shade Tree Commission. They've taken an inventory of the 3,700 street trees in town. and are working to replace those that have been damaged, not just to preserve the beauty, but to help with environmental concerns. At any rate, I know there are so many organizations, and council is just one of them. It's one that I feel capable and able to serve, and so that's why I am looking to be reelected. Thanks.
Great, thank you. The next question goes out to Kristen O'Neill. What skills, talents, and experience would you bring to the position on the Board of Ed?
Well, I feel that both my personal and professional life have helped me prepare in a lot of ways for this role. At work, I operate as part of a team. We are all working towards a common goal. We all have our various roles, but our success is only possible when we work together. There's a lot of compromise. There is a lot of give and take. There's a lot of communication between all of us that helps make our day-to-day job easier and more successful for our company in the end. I feel it's important that that we look outside our individual needs to see what works best for the group. I feel like that's an important and essential part of a group function. And that the root of all of this, of course, is communication, and that's always been a very, very important thing for me. I feel I possess all of these components, and that they would help me become a successful contributing board member. In addition to this, I bring 12 years of experience as a Glen Ridge school parent. I bring a lot of background and knowledge, institutional knowledge to the table. I'm a parent of a senior, so I have a full scope of knowledge of what it takes to navigate a public school education in Glen Ridge. And I understand how the schools work. I've been involved almost since the day my kids started at Linden. And after multiple turns with the home and school, I feel really comfortable working with various groups of parents on various initiatives. And I'm really excited to bring all of that to a larger, more global scale with the Board of Ed. And finally, and outside of all of this, I've really worked hard to make a lot of community connections in Glen Ridge. I have two boys, they play sports. I can't throw a ball, at all. So I wanted to, in order for me to be a part of their life there, I got involved with the GRAA, with the baseball teams, with football, working with the parents and the coaches and finding different ways to support the teams that way. I've run community author events, working in conjunction with the library. And I've also partnered with other wonderful parents in town to organize and orchestrate a Glen Ridge book swap for kids every year. That's something that's been really important to me, and something I hope that we can get back up and running once we can all gather inside again. So I feel like I bring a lot of experience in both the community and at both the school level and professional level to the table. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And David, what skills, talents, and experience would you bring to the position on the Board of Ed?
And by the way, I've heard Kristen's a great golfer, so don't let her sell her athletic ability short. She's also really intelligent, which is something that people don't usually say about themselves when they're asked what qualities they have. But knowing her for many years, she's also really, really intelligent. And it's unique that we're going to get someone on the board who is joining at the stage at which her children are at, where one's a junior and one's a senior. Most of the people you'll notice over the years that come on the board, I know I did when my kids were in the lower elementary. So I think she's absolutely right to have the perspective of having seen all four, now 5 schools. That's invaluable. She's also, and so I'll say these things now about myself, collaboration is the one thing for those of you on the CCC and anybody else who listened to Betsy Ginsburg talk about what qualities you need to be on the Board of Ed. Collaboration, a collaborative spirit, cooperation are always at the top of her list. We work in a committee system, but we make decisions as a group almost always unanimously after discussion on and offline. in our committees and then just in offline conversations, of course, in the public session as well. We have to make hard decisions. Some of the harder decisions I've made in my life have been Board of Ed connected, whether it's faculty decisions or otherwise. I think my experience on the board is probably at this point my most valuable quality. Because there's the expression knowing where the bodies are buried, however you want to put it. I've seen almost every iteration of every problem that our town and our schools can face, and so I feel like I'm prepared to go forward and make decisions about the next thing that we face. In terms of my experience on the board, I spent I think 6 years on the Personnel and Policy Committee, some of that or most or all of that as chair. I'm really happy with the things that we accomplished on that committee, including putting at the top of every agenda the diversity initiative in hiring, or at least in bringing candidates into focus for open positions. That's something that we started when I was chairman of the Policy and Personnel Committee, and it's something that still has focus today. I spent a lot of time on the referendum for the renovation of the schools and the acquisition of Central School. I was not the chair of Finance and Facilities at that time, but between that and communications, I put a lot of time and energy into that. And of course, most people would say it was a great success. Of course, there are people that everyone has their own opinions. I think over time, I've also developed great relationships, either as a parent or as a board member, with the faculty. And while we always make all of our decisions based on the best interests of our students, when it comes time, and I've lived through several contract negotiations, though not on the negotiations committee, as a member of Finance and Facilities, which obviously works hand in hand with negotiations, and as a board member, I think that and I haven't heard to the contrary, I think I've got good relationships with the administration and a lot of the faculty, such that they know by now that I'm one of the board members, one of all of the board members that work in good faith to try to get them as much as we possibly can within the constraints of money, which is always a big challenge to the school district. So those are the positive things I think I bring to the spot.
Great, thank you. And I see we've been joined by Anthony Bonnet. Anthony is a candidate running for the Board of Ed. And Anthony, if you could just maybe introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself. Yep, you're still muted. Oh, there you are.
Okay. All right. Let's get a little adjusted here. So my name is Anthony Bonnet. I have served on the board for one term. I am a member of the Personnel and Curriculum Committees. And professionally, I am a program manager. I work on large enterprise programs delivering primarily IT, but also business initiatives. And I think that serves me on the board because there are lots of large initiatives that that really take precedence in the school system. It's I think it's useful to look at the school as a large enterprise in terms of making decisions that meet the needs of most. You can never meet the needs of all. So, you have to look at the the overall larger picture of how things will play out. What else? I am also in town. I'm an assistant scoutmaster to the troop. We've been trying to restart the Boy Scout, shouldn't say Boy Scouts, it's not Boy Scouts, the scouting troop. Because we do welcome girls into the troop and into Cub Scouts. And so we've spent the whole time during COVID keeping the scout troop alive. And unfortunately, the Cub Scout troop had some difficulty. So we are currently kickstarting that. So I'm helping with bringing that back to life. And there's a lot of interest in town surrounding that. So that's just a few things about me. I think, what else can I tell you? My kids have been in town since preschool. So we've gone through every grade. They're currently in 10th grade. So that's where we are right now.
Great, great. I'm gonna toss you another question. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education, and why do you want to serve?
The role of the board is to be an advocacy body to the school system. It is, in a sense, a subset of the community. And so it is a way for those that want to be deeply engaged in the school system. I mean, everybody should be engaged in the school systems here. And I think most people have a great interest. But the board allows you to actually, it acts as a forum for community engagement. And it is a way for the community to engage with the school in a forum that's not the same as coming in and seeing a teacher or an administrator. I think there's a lot to be said about how the schools are run, and the board acts as an advocate to help determine how to best run the schools. The board does not run the schools. There is an administrative staff to run the schools, but we do act as an advocacy group to advise the school leadership on things that we see or the things that impact the community. For example, I know I was listening to David's talk. Finances impacts the community. Personnel and curriculum impacts the community. And all of the board members serve in some capacity in helping be a voice to groups that impact the schools, from home and school associations to educational foundations to GRAA, and several other organizations. So that is the role of the board, to really be a forum for engagement. And also I'll close with this. It also provides insights into how policies are decided upon. We don't make policy, but being on the board and coming to board meetings helps give you insights into how policies are determined.
Great. Thank you for that answer. We're going to move on to the town council candidates. In this case, Rebecca Meyer. What skills, talents, and experience would you bring to the position on town council?
All right, thanks for the question, Brian. I think my qualifications are for the town council really stem from both my community engagement and my professional experience. like I mentioned earlier, from a very young age, my mom really taught me the importance of being engaged locally and pursuing and being passionate about and advocating for issues that matter to you. So from the time I was young, I would be participate in letter writing campaigns and go to marches for causes that were important. And that kind of continued as I thought about my professional experience and the type of career that I wanted to pursue. So in every role that I've had, including some at large consulting companies, have really been purpose driven. They've always been with an eye towards how can I help people's lives be better or improve conditions around them. So, you know, my professional experience, again, much like Anthony, I've got IT project management experience, which requires me to learn a lot, understand where to go for information and how to ask questions, also to work to build consensus. I also spent a few years in a nonprofit doing workforce development research. So I had an opportunity to be really on the ground, not only with the organizations that serve individuals, but also meet with the individuals and as well with the fundraisers and the foundations. Again, working to kind of collaborate and find solutions. And for the last 15 years, I've been at Prudential, primarily, again, in an IT project management role, but working across the enterprise to really deliver business value. And so I think collaboration is important, the ability to listen, to hear, to understand, and really ask questions to see what's motivating people to reach out to the council. Why do they feel something is an issue? Kind of the why underneath it. I've also volunteered in town, kind of slowly getting to know and understand and learn more about the community through, like I mentioned earlier, through volunteering in the school, participating in the CCC, and as well as sitting on the planning board. So I really feel like I've got a wonderful cross-section of experience, a history of building consensus and collaborating, and really, I guess, just a passion in my personal and my professional life for working to make people's lives better and to improve the situation around me. So.
Great, thank you. Anne Marie, what skills, talents, and experience would you bring to the position on town council?
Thanks, Brian. I have to say this question I've always struggled with it because I don't really think my skills, talents, and experience are that unique compared to our fellow candidates here or other residents in town who are active volunteers and who have also contributed a lot. So I will just say I'm inquisitive, thoughtful, even-tempered. I like working in groups. And I think I have a sense of humor, which I think are all key qualities to have for serving in this role. For me, it really was a bit of a learning curve in serving on the council. I had no prior experience in government. I have served on the planning board during my time on the council, and am also currently on the finance committee and public safety committee. So at this point, I believe I have demonstrated that I can do the work. I believe I've earned the respect of my peers, and with that experience can contribute directly on a number of initiatives, working with our administrators and department heads, with contacts at the county level and in other towns. We have a relatively small but very dedicated and most capable team of professionals taking care of the business of running our town. And I'm more than willing and have more time, frankly, at this point, to work directly with them to contribute, to do whatever I can to address issues, policies, whatever it takes to deal with the matter at hand.
Great, thank you. The next question will go out to Kristen O'Neill. Kristen, what do you see as 2 or 3 of the most pressing challenges facing, I want to make sure I get this right. Yes, facing the Board of Education. I'm juggling between them. 2 or 3 of the most pressing challenges facing the Board of Education, and if you could choose one and tell us how you would address it.
Well, it's funny. I mean, to Anne Marie's point with the question before this is the one that I struggled the most with. I'm coming at this right now. I'm coming at this question from a parent and a resident's perspective. I don't have the inside perspective and the background knowledge that would come with serving on the Board of Ed. I can easily identify what I see as challenges, and I'm sure in the background they are dealing with many more that we're not aware of. I mean, to me, the obvious one, and I think probably anyone in town would agree with me on this, is money, is budget. I think we all know that our budget is tied to our property taxes, that our state aid, comes and goes, it rises and falls. It always depends on the state budget, and it's never enough. We always want and need more. We're limited to how much we can increase our budget every year with our cap. I know that that's always a topic that comes up when the board presents the budget in the spring. So money, I think, is the biggest issue. As a parent and as a resident, I can't imagine how I can help solve that problem. But as a board member, I am very much willing to learn how I can help and how we can help, manage the money and help our budget, which is already must be stretched so thin, cover our increasing needs and everything that we need to keep our schools running. And the other thing that comes to mind, of course, is something that we see in the news every day, and that's hiring and staffing shortages. I feel like you see it almost in every facet of the American economy, and the educational sector is no different. I mean, we hear about it. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about bus drivers, but we hear about it with nurses, with school lunch workers. We hear about it with educators as well. And there's been a lot of burnout over the past couple of years, and I feel that it's been a challenging time for our educators, and I feel that as much as we're doing to support them, I feel that, we can always do more, and it's hard to find those ways. So that's, that would be something, anything that we could do as a board to help support, the hiring and the retention of our amazing employees. That's a priority for me.
Great, thank you. Anthony, the same question goes to you. As what do you see as 2 or 3 of the most pressing challenges facing the Board of Ed? And if you could tell us about one, how you would address it.
I think over the last couple of years, a few things have popped up, but one of the things that have always been for me, the challenges that the district has been class size, and it's been academics. And so we, through the referendum, have in part addressed the class size issue. I think we will see improvements as time goes on. So I was on the board toward the end of that, so I can't take any credit for the hardest work that really went on to make that happen, to bring it to fruition. And it, it has put us in a really good position given the last year and a half. It just, I don't think we could have done any better than we did. And it was circumstantial in terms of the timing, but the work that was done was planned, and so we're fortunate for that. What I feel now are challenges are it's citizenship and it's academics. I think it's still academics, and I think what's happened over the last year and a half, you know, with the lockdowns and having kids remote has brought those two things into focus. So I'm going to focus on the academics piece of it. Our kids in general are tech savvy, more tech savvy generally than we are as adults. And the last year and a half has kind of shoved more tech in their faces and in the teachers' faces and in the administration's faces and in the parents' faces. I mean, kids had to sit through school and at home, which was not easy. And, you know, my kids are a little older, so I didn't have to monitor them. But for parents of younger kids, I don't know how they easily did that while working, or even if they weren't working. It's a big deal. And I think now that we're back, we have to now readjust to where kids are, and some kids are better suited to a lot of computer time, and some kids aren't. Is it good for them? That's a question that, you know, needs to be asked individually on a per child basis. But we do need to now pivot back to in-class instruction and still deal with the ramifications of the last year and a half, while maintaining a high level of standard. And I think that is, you know, while we're back, and most students are glad we're back, and most teachers are glad we're back. Certainly most administrators are glad we're back as well as parents. You know, we still have to make the adjustments, understand the adjustments of what this means for kids going forward, because it's not going to be normal for them for a while, I think. And I think that is, you know, as we continue that pivot back to what was normal school. I don't know if we'll ever fully go back to it. I'm hopeful we will, but it is a big, to my mind, probably the largest global challenge. I mean, there are other challenges to be sure, but I think this is far-reaching for kids old and young, and, you know, regardless of you know what their background is, they've all been impacted by this. And so I think we need to continue to take a measured approach in terms of looking at kids and at where they are, and then helping them to be comfortable back in school so they can start to, you know, feel normal again.
Great. Thank you for that answer. David Campbell, same question goes to you. What do you see as 2 or 3 of the most pressing challenges facing the Board of Ed? And if you could choose one, tell us how you would address it.
Okay, I could, now that we're sort of getting into the substance of it, shifting away from ourselves, I could talk about each of these things for hours, but I understand the format is just a couple minutes. So I'll hit them, and maybe it won't sound very thoughtful because I'm going to hit them and move on. But money, anyone who doesn't include money, as Anthony and Kristen both did, really needs to get up to speed on what the problems are facing the Board of Ed. Always has been, and will continue to be. Physical space used to be our second biggest problem. We've alleviated that a little bit, taken the pressure off that with the renovation, but physical space will always continue to be a challenge, a limitation on Glen Ridge. If any of you go to other school districts, whether like Kristen through sports or the marching band, you get just a couple miles from here, and, you know, just the high school has 10 times more real estate than all of our schools combined. And that limits our ability to do a lot of things. But the newer things that I would not have even thought to say running last time in terms of challenges facing the schools, maybe the biggest one and the one that could have the most destructive effect is social media. Social media, Facebook, and I guess the other outlets. I'm not on Facebook, but it's become a substitute for interpersonal interaction, face-to-face conversation. That has led to uncivil discourse and the dissemination of false information. And that's going to, if unchecked, I mean, we're a town of 7,500 people and we have 3 different Facebook groups. If left unchecked, that can erode the quality of what is today the #1 non-admission only public school district in the state. And if it continues the way it has, that will erode the quality of our schools because it will make it harder to find people to run for office. More important, it will drive quality administrators and faculty out of this town because a lot of what you read on Facebook is just plain false. And then, as I said, uncivil. And people just won't work for administrator and faculty wages if they have to listen to this stuff and read it and hear about it. Of course, on the student level, it's an easy way to bully one another. And that, of course, that is going to cause its own problems. So social media has become an enormous problem. And then I'll agree with Anthony, absolutely, that in terms of an immediate problem, COVID, and COVID is not over, and COVID won't be over when it is over. The effects of COVID, many of which Anthony highlighted, so I won't repeat them, will be both academic, it will challenge our students academically, and it will challenge them socially. It has already. Of the problems that I listed, there's nothing we can do about any of them as a board. I can't encourage people to get off Facebook or to conduct themselves in a more civil manner on social media. Just not going to happen. I wish I had that kind of power, but I don't. The one that we can attack, as Anthony mentioned, is COVID. And we have a plan. We're implementing the plan. It involves talking to the students. We met with, as board members, in focus groups with faculty. We met with students, great kids, my kids' classmates, who told us what they would like to see the schools do once we're back. And I think John Lawler and the other administrators are executing on that. We're assessing the academic slippage, and I think the curriculum is going to reflect focus on weaknesses that some of our kids are showing, whether it's in standardized testing or just in the classroom. So that's the one that we can really take on. The administrators are acutely aware of what happened and the effects long term, and they're addressing them. As to the others, listen, on money, I will say this: it's an extremely generous town. Every meeting, I feel like we are thanking someone for extremely generous donations. GREF, the Education Foundation, is an organization that everyone should learn more about. Without it, I can't list the number of things that we would be going without the Education Foundation. And then the home and schools and the generosity of the people that participate in the home and schools. Again, the board absolutely could not do what it does with state aid and the money we get from taxes, as exorbitant as the tax rate is in this town. We still need and thrive on the generous spirit of the folks in town. So that's the way we've been addressing the money thing, but the money thing is still a thing.
Great, thank you for that answer. We now go over to the town council candidates. Rebecca Meyer, what do you see as 2 or 3 of the most pressing challenges facing the town council? And if you could choose one, can you tell us how you would address it?
Sure. I mean, one of the, I'll kind of rattle them off on the list and kind of pick one to kind of do a deeper dive on. One is around communication and kind of meeting people where they are and how they want to be communicated with. As I know Anne Marie, mentioned that it is one of the councils, and I agree with her, one of their responsibilities to disseminate information as it becomes available. Two, really, a little bit more on diversity and inclusion. I know we're going to tackle that in a later question. And then three, really the changing demographics of the town. With all the hard work that our planning board did and the Baldwin Street development, people are no longer coming to Glen Ridge, or will no longer come to Glen Ridge necessarily just for the school system. So the needs of individuals who may be here for commuting town, close access to hospitals and work, or any apartment living, kind of urban, suburban next door to Montclair. So I think the demographics of our town are going to change. But the one I think I want to tackle is really around communication. And David mentioned, I didn't even realize that there were 3 Facebook groups. I knew of 2 Facebook groups for a town of 7,500 people. And I feel like a lot of the communication runs through the town very quickly by virtual word of mouth, either through Facebook or on any sort of other social media accounts. And I think the council will have an opportunity, I believe, to, I would say, drive the narrative a little bit more, kind of get out in front of the story and figure out, okay, there are definitely people who aren't on Facebook or who don't prefer electronic communications as their primary form of engagement with the town. How do we get to those individuals? What type of information might people like to have mailed to them? Could there be a different format for town council meetings? I know the Board of Education does YouTube live streams. Is it something that the council could kind of take a look at? Because I know there's a lot of great work that goes on behind the scenes. I like Kristen also mentioned earlier, right? I'm coming at this from the outside. I don't know the inner workings of the council yet. I've had an opportunity to serve on the planning board, so I've kind of, it's a very different perspective when you're looking from the inside out. And so I think if we can address communication, I think that would alleviate a lot of the questions and dialogue that goes on back and forth on the Facebook pages, and really get people to kind of feel more connected to the community. So I'll address a couple of the others and some of the other questions, Brian.
Okay, thank you. And we get to Anne Marie Morrow. Anne Marie, what do you see as 2 or 3 of the most pressing challenges facing the town council? And if you could choose one and tell us how you would address it. Sure,
thanks, Brian. I mean, I would say, going back to David's point, I mean, it is money, taxes. It's a perennial challenge. It's one of the biggest challenges, and it's also one of the flip sides to the positive. I mean, we're a small town, we're fully built out, we're residential for the most part. I think we like it that way. Kids can walk or bike to school, to community events. Commuters can walk or bike to the train station, but we have very few ratables to offset the high level of services that our residents have come to expect. The challenge of keeping taxes as reasonable as possible while continuing to provide these services remains a continuing one. We've used shared service arrangements with neighboring towns to help in budgeting for essential services. We've sought out and received grants for transportation, for road paving, for sustainability initiatives, and we will continue those efforts. This past year, due to the impact of COVID-19, there was a decrease in certain revenue streams, but our financial snapshot as of today and projecting to year end is very good, and going into next year looks very strong as well. But the issue I wanted to mention that I think is probably of great concern, it's one that has been a persistent concern of residents, both at council meetings and public safety meetings. It was also a top-rated concern of residents in the master plan reexamination survey that Rebecca mentioned. It was a survey distributed borough-wide in 2020 by the planning board, and that issue is pedestrian safety. We recognize there are several intersections that are consistently of concern. I happen to live on one of those streets, Washington Street. I'm happy to report that last week, the County Traffic Division did install at the corner new traffic signals. They are larger, they are brighter, they have more prominent heads. It is a significant and much needed upgrade. Our Glen Ridge Police Department does have a traffic unit. They can place speed signs, assign traffic details for speeding, and my personal issue is failure to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. The police department has put traffic units at those intersections just to enforce those restrictions. And they are very responsive to residents' concerns. The one project I wanted to specifically mention concerns the crosswalks along Ridgewood Avenue from Clark Street in front of the high school to Darwin Place in front of the train station. The borough has identified this corridor for construction funding for crosswalk improvements. A 3-year accident history of this stretch from 2017 to 2020 showed that there were about 33 accidents, approximately one each month, involving not only cars, but pedestrians and bicyclists. So the plan that we will be submitting a grant to the state for will cover the construction cost for curb extensions. It will shorten the distance of the crosswalk. It will widen the striping, and it will place flashing beacons out in this curb extension so that they will be more visible to drivers coming through that stretch. The curb extensions will include green infrastructure components for drainage concerns. We know these crosswalks, they're used by students at the high school, they're used by commuters, they're used by people running to the post office. This is an area that's really highly used in town, and I think we will greatly benefit by having that section safer for everybody. And we're also looking to improve lighting in that area overall. So that also, I think, is an important concern that will be addressed.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you for that answer. We're going to move on to questions from the public. We did receive quite a few questions from the public. I'm afraid we probably won't be able to get to all the questions tonight. I'll just interrupt here in the middle just to say we are having coffee with the candidates this Saturday, October 23rd from 9 a.m. to 10. If your question isn't addressed tonight, please, I hope you can make it down to the train station around 9. We'll get you a cup of coffee and you can talk with the candidates directly. The first question from the public, we'll start with the Board of Education candidates. Kristen, on the topic of diversity and inclusion, do you think the Board of Education has sufficiently addressed these issues already, or do you feel there's still more work to be done in this area?
Well, I feel that the needs and priorities of our district are always evolving, so I don't think that we should ever consider an important issue, or really any issue, as sufficiently addressed. You know, we have a really diverse community in Glen Ridge, and we live in a really diverse area. So I feel like we have a responsibility to model our schools in that way and to keep that in mind when we are moving forward with our goals. You know, with regards to DEI specifically, I know this is something that the board's been focusing on for a few years now. I had some time earlier today, and I went back and I looked at their annual goals, and I noticed that diversity at the educator level has been a priority for the board for some time. And the board recently conducted a DEI audit that they now have, or that we would now have as a tool that it's it's something else to help us become more informed about the concerns of our parents and students and educators. So we're always learning and we're always getting more information. So, you know, I do think that this is something that will be a topic of conversation for some time. And I do actually want to point out that, you know, a quarter of our students actually are minorities. And I feel like, you know, as a school system, you know, we have a responsibility to kind of keep up with the change in demographics that our town's experiencing. And I also think it's important to keep in mind that the concept of DEI it covers so many other levels of student population. You know, it covers everything from gender to religion, to ability, to socioeconomic status. So I feel like there's a lot of work that can be done in this area. And, you know, again, I don't feel like we should ever consider any issue as sufficiently addressed.
Great, thank you. That same question goes to Anthony Bonnet, this case. Anthony, on the topic of diversity and inclusion, do you think the Board of Education has sufficiently addressed these issues already, or do you feel there's still more work to be done in this area?
I think there's still more work to be done. And in part, Kristen indicated why. When I moved to town, I would say there might have been 10 to 12% minority students. And now we're up to 25%. And you know, it is a evolving situation that requires evolving awareness. And I think the equity survey is one tool that is a vehicle to indicate awareness. And it actually, you know, it was a good thing to do. I think it's going to be a good thing to look at, and a good thing to question. I mean, I think it brings to mind a lot of things that can be addressed, including bias within the school system, within the potentially within the administration. I mean, this is something that you don't really notice until you have cause to see it, and someone points it out. And so now we have cause, it's being pointed out, and we will learn and pivot with it. I mean, there's no point at which, you know, we're done. I think embracing all the people that come here, regardless of race, religion, you know, gender, nationality, is a way to encourage good citizenship from the kids. If they see us living this way, then they'll follow our example. And so I think that this is just one of those things that, just like in IT, and Rebecca can speak to this as well as anybody, in IT, you're always looking at evolution. Technology is always changing. You have to adjust your approach all the time. What you did 10 years ago, maybe 50% of that is valid now, maybe less. So I think it's an evolving thing. I'm pleased the town, the board is looking at it and uncovering it, shining a light on it. So I think that's all I have to say about it.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. David, we'll go to you on the topic of diversity and inclusion. Do you think the Board of Education has sufficiently addressed these issues already, or do you feel there's still more work to be done in this area?
There is still more work to be done in this area. And I'll echo Brian's little advertisement for this Saturday. This is a topic that I've been interested in, focused on, working on for almost 30 years, either in my career or on the Board of Ed. So I live with it every day, and I could talk about it for hours, but I'll try to keep it to just a couple minutes. I've answered the question, but there's so much more to say. When we have a group of students that feels other than, less than, left out, underserved, whether that's athletes or special ed kids, or in this case, minorities, we have to address it. I've heard this described as a solution looking for a problem. Make no mistake, this is a problem. There is a problem. So there are people that think there is no problem. There is a problem. I think that there are people that have grown up either in this town or in environments where they're insulated from the feelings of the people that feel on the outside looking in on this issue. And so they just don't hear what the problem is. So from the perspective of the minority students and families in town, there is a problem. From the perspective of the rest of us who are not minorities, there is a problem. And this is the part that I've always focused on. And I think it's the part that a lot of people that are not a member of a minority group don't understand. Notwithstanding the fact that we may or may not have 25% minority students in our schools, it is a very homogeneous looking town relative to our surrounding towns, relative to the state, and relative to the world. And in addition to underserving our minority students by not having people on our faculty and on our staff that look like them, we are underserving the white students in our town because if they go to a school with an all-white faculty or staff, they are not prepared to leave this town and go into a world that is diverse and becoming increasingly diverse. They, like our minority students, need to see authority figures at the school that look like the authority figures in the rest of the world. Everybody gets the benefit of the diversity audit. White, Black, AAPI, everybody, all of our students are served by focusing on this issue and working on the problem, which has not been solved, just to answer the question. I think there are follow-up questions on diversity and inclusion.
Sure.
Like, what are we doing to fix it? What do we think should happen?
Yes.
I'll save my answers.
Okay, we'll get to those
questions are asked.
Great, thank you. Rebecca, I think the same general question goes to you on the topic of diversity and inclusion. Do you think the town council has sufficiently addressed these issues already, or do you feel there's still more work to be done in this area?
I mean, I think Kirsten, Anthony, and David have kind of summed it up very well. I feel like there's always work to be done. There's always opportunities to learn. I had an opportunity to read the report, and I think what struck me the most was that within that report, there was a section where people feel comfortable having those conversations, but not necessarily in town. Like, there's something keeping people from feeling comfortable about discussing these issues, and things that are a term that sort of that's kind of near and dear to me is being able to be your authentic whole self. And I think a lot of people in town don't necessarily feel that way. So I absolutely think there's work to be done. I actually view this as a really amazing opportunity for the borough and the BOE to partner together, right? I think the BOE did some really good work, and with the audit and going out there and asking the questions and talking to the community. I think there's an opportunity for partnership between the council and the borough. Things like hiring standards, training programs. I don't have all the answers about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, because I'm not currently sitting on the inside, but I also know that there are a lot of organizations in town that are working through these issues. So I think this is really a great opportunity for the town to come together and really to continue to educate each other and to learn and to grow. So I think that kind of sums up my position on that.
Great, thank you. For Kristen, do you feel our district should review the current hiring practices to improve our ability to attract and hire diverse candidates?
Well, I think this is already on the radar for the board. At the last meeting, it was a topic of conversation after the results of the audit report were presented. I think one of the board members asked Olive Branch if they had any recommendations on new practices, new guidelines that, or not guidelines, new practices that the board should consider. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anything should be considered static. I feel like in order to grow, that we should always be looking on how to review and improve the way we do things. If we look at hiring, or if we look at reviewing how we hire and recruit new candidates, doing that's only going to increase the number of applicants. It's going to increase the chances of us hiring the best person for the job. And that's really what we want. At the end of the day, we just want the best applicant, the best person in that role that we're hiring for. And I do think there's probably, a variety of different ways that we can look at the way we're doing things and make sure that, and see that we're doing it better. Maybe, doing outreach to different areas that we haven't considered before. And, until I have a chance to really, get involved and dig in and see where they're working now, I don't really have any specific recommendations on how they can get started, but I think it's important.
Great. Anthony Bonnet, do you feel our district should review current hiring practices to improve our ability to attract and hire diverse candidates?
Yes, and I will also add that they have, that we are. I will, being on the inside and watching the process, given our limited capability. I mean, there is pretty flat administration, so there isn't a human resources area, but they have been reaching out in places that are non-traditional for the town. So I can say there have been improvements, and I will also say that being on the inside and understanding better the candidate pool, statewide and nationally, there, you just don't see a lot of people going into education generally, and there seems to be a lack of candidates that find our town attractive. And so, that bears some self-examination on our part in terms of, we can't, not being able to compete with larger districts that surround us for diverse candidates on salary is something that we just have to live with. However, I think we should start emphasizing some of the things that make our district unique, some of the things that have been spoken about before in terms of the community support for initiatives in the schools. Chromebooks, for example, I don't know of any other town that has gotten Chromebooks in every child's hands without having a budget line item for it. That is an example of one of the things that makes this town unique. And so I think we need to focus on marketing our non-traditional virtues to candidates who, we don't traditionally get. And you hear about it all the time where teachers, candidates have to go in their own pockets for, items for their classrooms, but that doesn't happen here. And there's a reason for it. And I think it's a unique proposition for the town to, find a way to promote that, that difference. And that will help. That will help. It will not increase the candidate pool, but anything we can do to be more attractive to candidates will give us a better shot at hiring, candidates that start to look more like the student body.
Great, thank you. David, I'll throw the question to you. Do you feel our district should review current hiring practices to improve our ability to attract and hire diverse candidates?
Yeah, I do. Before I answer, I think you may have skipped over Anne Marie.
Yeah, no, I'm going to get back to her on the
okay.
Previous.
Double
I missed that one.
I would not want your job right now. This is like
no, I'll get back to her in just after your answer.
Yeah, you got the full Brady bunch going here. I mean, the answer is yes, and I have to admit, I mean, Anthony can remind me when this was. It was 4 or 5 years ago when this issue was really raised by the public at public session and offline. And the point was made, and at the time I was chair of personnel and policy, and the point was made about the low percentage of faculty and staff and administrators of color. And it was like, somehow it had never occurred to me before, but they had me at hello, and immediately we did start reviewing hiring practices, recruitment. Obviously, as Anthony said, this is another area where money as a limitation and a challenge to our schools came into play, because how is it that there are towns that can attract minority candidates, not necessarily hire one candidate over another, but attract candidates? So we're not necessarily trying to increase the faculty. We are absolutely trying to increase the faculty candidate pool. And how do we do that without the money that some other school districts have? And how do we do it in a town that, again, really doesn't reflect the life experience of the candidates that we're trying to attract? So those have been challenges, but Dirk has really focused on this. And, there's not a whole lot the board can do aside from ride Dirk and make it an issue that we put on the agenda of every personnel and policy committee meeting. As long as I was on personnel and policy, what did we do about increasing the minority candidate pool since our last meeting? And that's what we did every meeting. We subscribed to services, we bought software that tracked the numbers, and we started entering different job fairs, going to different schools. We did take action, and we continue to take action. As I said in answer to question number 1, still a lot of work to be done. The numbers have improved. It's numbers. They've improved. There's no arguing with them. They haven't improved quickly enough by my estimation, and they haven't improved greatly enough by my estimation. So we've had a strategy for a few years. Personnel and Policy Committee and the board should always review it to see if there are ways that we can, other ways to skin this cat.
Great, thank you. And I want to apologize profusely, Anne-Marie. I'm sorry I skipped over you there on the last question. It was on the topic of diversity and inclusion. Do you think the town council has sufficiently addressed these issues already, or do you feel there's still more work to be done in this area?
Thanks, Brian. Yes, I guess to echo the comments of those speaking before me, I believe we can and should always look to do better. I remember back in 2017, there was a connection with a petition that was circulated that was requesting that Glen Ridge be designated a sanctuary city. I remember meeting with residents, working with the council and our borough attorney to adopt a resolution expressing Glen Ridge's commitment to equal, respectful, and dignified treatment of all people, regardless of their immigration status, and to be a welcoming community. In the last year, in response really to other national events, the Mayor and Council have published statements in response to the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020. This year, in response to acts of violence against the Asian American and Pacific Islander community, and most recently with the anti-Semitic vandalism, the swastika at Clayfield Playground. I do think words matter, and that we as a community and as individuals must continue to speak out, condemn these incidents of hate and violence. We are a small town, but as others have noted, we are part of a larger community and in a state that's really one of the most diverse in our country. Earlier this year, the Mayor and Council published a separate statement really expanding on that message from 2017 to reinforce and recognize Glen Ridge as an inclusive community that welcomes diversity, that believes in the safety, equality of all residents, and actively supports an end to all forms of prejudice. As David, I think it was David that noted diversity and inclusion makes for better students. I will say it also makes us better citizens. We are open to suggestions, to hearing from residents as to how we can do better and take more positive actions. The borough has recently named a DEI officer in the borough. That's a recent appointment. So I expect we and you and the community will hear more and learn more going forward.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. For our town council candidates, Rebecca in this case, do you have any ideas to help our town feel welcoming to all residents?
Sure. And I think I touched on this a little bit earlier as one of the things that I saw as one of the challenges, kind of the changing demographics of the town, and with the Baldwin Street development of kind of bringing a rental community into what's typically been a single family home ownership and people moving to the town for schools. Because I myself, I think I found it a little challenging to understand and know kind of what was going on in the community before my kids got into the public school district. And so I think this also ties back to the communications process that I think we can, continue to evolve across the town. I think one, kind of idea that kind of popped into my head is, kind of partner with the local real estate agents to get out like a key town information on organizations, where to find ordinances, what days trash come out, or kind of very simple things that would make people feel kind of more comfortable when they first move into town. And I think this would go along the lines with kind of a multi-pronged communication approach, right? Meet people where they want to be met and how they would like to communicate with and engage with us. So, I think the town's got some, communication tools, and I think we just need to kind of continue to evolve those and make those who are here for reasons other than the school district and the schools and the single family residents, which are all amazing reasons to be here, feel welcome and a part of the community as well. So.
Great, thank you. We'll circle back to Anne Marie. Same question. Do you have ideas to help our town feel welcoming to all residents?
Well, yes. I mean, I would say as town officials, we need to be open-minded for suggestions and ideas in this regard. I, as a member of the council, want to know whether anything we are doing or not doing is sending the wrong message, one that is not welcoming. I mean, one practical thing that we can avoid doing is making people feel unwelcome, being sensitive to cultural and ethnic celebrations and dates, avoiding scheduling and holding meetings or other public sessions on some of these dates, which might suggest that we don't have a respect or concern for the traditions of others. Perhaps it's too simple, but being sensitive and aware of actions that could be offensive to others and doing our best to avoid them shows that we are welcoming. But as I said, we are open to suggestions, to hearing from residents as to how we can do better and take more positive actions. We are open and happy to work with groups to help them through promoting events in the borough, negotiating the townwide email system to announce an event, figuring out how to obtain a permit to use a field for an event, how to reserve the sign on the corner. We are most willing and happy to facilitate groups in town that want to hold events. But again, I guess I would say, referencing the prior question, words do matter. Reinforcing statements that we are an inclusive and welcoming community, letting others know that we are open to working with groups. We're open to listening and learning. Just let us know, I guess, and we will take your point of view seriously.
Great, thank you. I think we have the last question, because it is getting a little late, and so this will be the last question for each of you. It'll be a little different for the Board of Education candidates versus Town Council. Kristen O'Neill, how do you feel that we can prepare our children to be critical thinkers when it comes to digesting information that comes from so many sources now, social media, cable news, etc.?
Well, before I answer that, I actually just want to touch on something that Rebecca and Emery just mentioned about tying the borough and the schools together in terms of outreach to new residents. This is an older idea, and I certainly can't take credit for it, but several years ago, the home and schools used to partner with new families coming in and giving tours to either prospective families looking to move into town, or new families who had just moved into town, and kind of taking the time to bring them under their wing and kind of make sure they got settled and grounded. So maybe once this is all settled, that's a program we could go back and look at renewing. But I was so glad to see this question on our list, because I feel like it's such an important topic. I feel that this issue is something that is really applicable not only to students now, but for them later in life. Everyone needs to know how to be a critical thinker. It's really the only way that they can really succeed academically. Not only academically, but beyond the classroom. Our kids need to know how to do research. They need to know how to do that deep Google dive, how to look through social media platforms, how to read reviews and articles and gather as much information that they can. But I feel this is a learned skill. And they have to be taught how to recognize proper source material from opinion outlets. And it's not so easy to do anymore. And the skill comes from practice, it comes from instruction. And I don't think it's limited to just one perspective of instruction or in a single class. I don't know that it's the board's role to kind of get down to this granular level of instruction, but from a parent's perspective, I would love to see this type of thinking be implemented in various ways across all grades. Kids have access to so much now, and at such an earlier age than we ever thought, than we ever could have. Bad habits can be learned quickly. And if you can teach a kid how to how to properly look at the source material and where they're getting their information from. I think that just serves so many people. It will serve them so much better in the long run. Of course, most importantly at school. And yeah, I think that's it.
Great, thank you. Anthony, the same question goes to you. How do you feel we can prepare our children to be critical thinkers when it comes to digesting information that comes from so many sources now, social media, cable news, etc.?
I think the best way to attack that is to try to digest it all. And by that, I mean, when your students are doing a research project, even if, or just, looking something up, I think having them use diverse sources, and really chronicle where they got it from, so that they can start to compare and contrast what they're reading, because they're going to see some conflicting information. And then when they see that, that's when you really get to that critical type of thinking, because now you naturally go to them and say, well, why would this outlet say this, and why would that outlet say this, say the other thing? I think embracing all of it and then analyzing it will teach them that anything and everything bears a second and third look, and the question why, in terms of, why should I believe this source? Is this a trusted source? And if it is a trusted source, then I should be able to find it someplace else as well. So I think instead of trying to filter, I think it is important to use multiple sources, and then, force the question, ask the question why, get them engaged in thinking about, why, this source says this, the other source says that, and also ask them why, if they have a preference, if they find themselves leaning one way or the other, ask themselves why they're doing that. I mean, all of that will build critical thinking and self-examination. And I think that's how we address it.
Great, thank you. David, same question to you. How do you feel that we can prepare our children to be critical thinkers when it comes to digesting information that comes from so many sources, such as social media, cable news, etc.?
So three thoughts here. One, I completely agree with Kristen that this is, were we as board members to get into this at the curriculum or policy level, it would be micromanaging. I think this is something that has to be decided at a level below us, but it can be a goal that we set for the district, for the board, for the administration. And it's not as though our administrators don't take ideas from us when we feel like we've got a great idea, but they're the people that run the best school in the state on a day-to-day level. They think about this stuff 24/7. And as hard as we work on the board, this is not our day job. So I would be hesitant to make specific suggestions. That said, I think we do a great job of it. I mean, we turn out, and we don't brag enough at the high school level, but we turn out kids that are well prepared for college and for conversations about critical thinking, for critical thinking about important issues. Our kids get to the best schools in the country and the world, and they succeed there, and then they go on and succeed again. So more than any other public school in the state, I think we do a good job. So the question should be, how do we continue to prepare our kids? That said, in terms of one idea, and I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel here, if it came up to our level for, well, what do we think as a district policy? I'd be okay if the administrators or the faculty decided at any grade level or every grade level to have the kids put their phones down for some or all of the school day. I think critical thinking is born out in the old ways of educating and learning, writing and conversing in person. I think what Anthony talked about, the free exchange of ideas, I mean, that is critical thinking. I don't think it happens with a phone in your hand. I mean, I think ideas can be exchanged electronically, but I think in school, I see it when during COVID, sitting in on my kids' classes, listening through the walls, reading the papers that they're writing. There's a lot of critical thinking going on, and it's all done in the old-fashioned way. The Socratic method, papers that are turned in, and that kind of exchange of idea. And I think that can't necessarily always happen with the distraction of the device in your hands. So if someone ever had the idea to have our kids put their phones down during one class or all classes or a large part of the school day, so that they would have to converse verbally, I think that would be good, not just for critical thinking, but for social reasons as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that answer. We just have one more question for the town council candidates and we'll be done here. This goes to Rebecca. How would you work to ensure that all residents are informed about happenings in the borough and they are easily able to give feedback and ask questions?
Yeah, I mean, Brian, I'll keep this short and sweet. I thank everyone for their time, for sticking around a little bit longer with us to kind of get to know us. I think I addressed that a little bit in my previous response, kind of around a multi-pronged communication approach. And I know it's something Anne Marie touched on a little bit as well. It's really working with the town members and understanding, how do people want to receive information? How do people want to civically engage and feel more connected to the town council? I mean, I feel like I'm connected because I had an opportunity to, partner with Anne Marie on the planning board and get to know some of the borough administrators. So if I have a question, I know where to go. I think I'm hopeful that, as sitting on the council, I can work with other council members to devise a communications strategy, so to speak, to figure out, how do we reach new people in town? What's some of the critical information that people feel like they're missing? I'm going to give a shout out to our, Essex County executive for the communication that he did on the COVID vaccine and the availability and those mailers and those flyers. I shared that with my other family members who live out of state, and they were truly impressed. I saw advertisements for that in the Essex County magazines, and I truly believe they thought about what's the best strategy to reach a particular population to accomplish a certain goal. And I think as council, we can kind of take a look at the different issues that the council is tackling and what's the best way to get the message out there and to communicate it. Is it through mail? Is it through an open hall like town forum? Is it, electronic distribution? So I think a lot can be accomplished through a kind of an effective communications plan and a communications strategy, because I think that will help folks feel more engaged.
Great, thank you. Anne Marie, you get the last word here. How would you work to ensure that all residents are informed about happenings in the borough and that they are easily able to give feedback and ask questions?
Yes, thanks, Brian. And again, thanks to everyone tonight and everyone watching for their patience. I would say the communication kind of goes on at various levels. We currently have in place the Nixle system in town to notify residents of sort of weather, safety, road closures, and other emergencies. That communication, it's safe and secure. We also have our borough announcements. And have increased use of social media, including Facebook. We have on the table to review at the council level a Glen Ridge Communications Policy, and that will cover GRTV, the bulletin board platform, and the use of social media. The original policy that we have is quite dated, and we will look to get working on that in the upcoming months. In June of this year, we did host for the first, and hopefully not the last time, a virtual council office hours. It was done via Facebook Live. It featured our borough administrator, Mike Zakelli, Debbie Manns, and myself. We were live. We covered topics such as the current 2021 budget, COVID-19 response, return of the jitney, Benson Street Community Garden update. Debbie spoke about the Essex Hudson Greenway project as well. We were live. We were able to take direct questions from residents via the chat function. We would like to do that again. It's our plan to do something similar to that again and include other council members and devote the time to theme topics, parks and rec, roadway improvements, again, with the view that residents can ask direct questions of those participating. We are back to in-person meetings at Borough Hall. Our meeting schedule is posted on the Borough website. There's an announcement that goes out prior to the meetings with a detailed agenda. We typically meet on the second and fourth Monday of each month at 7:30. There are opportunities during the meeting for public comment. I know during the period that our meetings were virtual, we did and could provide for call-in from residents. But since we have now gone back to in-person, we can't really accommodate that feature. I know other municipalities are also looking to try to deal with a hybrid meeting. We do live stream our meetings on Facebook. That we do. We have been kind of focused on reopening the municipal complex to residents. And so with that being the focus, we do need to return, I guess, to better methods of communicating. Because I do recognize not everyone can come to a meeting. And I'd like to explore with the council some other method by which questions can be submitted, either via email in advance of the meeting, designated questions, residents could designate questions to be asked in the meeting, perhaps in lieu of a personal appearance. We do need to work on that. But I do think that might be one additional way to dialogue with residents. And then I just want to mention, I too appreciated those phone calls that we would get on, I don't know, they seemed to come at like Sunday night at 6:45, and it was Joe D, our county exec, alerting us to the latest COVID news and where to get a vaccine and which sites were open for testing. And I do think they did a great job keeping all of the residents of the county informed. And that is it. So I thank you, Brian, and thanks everyone. And I hope people do join us on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock at the train station.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Anne Marie. And I believe that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you again to everyone who participated. And I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of the questions submitted by the public. But again, you can bring any additional questions for the candidates to this Saturday's Coffee with the Candidates at 9 a.m. at the train station. And if you'd like to learn more about the CCC, please reach out to us via email at glenridgecc.mail@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook or check out our website, glenridgecc.wordpress.com. Thank you so much and good night.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.